This is the Beats and Balls Show. That Guy Kenn. JR, the Beatmaker. Mr. Crisp.
Ballers assemble. Welcome back to the lockdown edition of the Beats and Balls Show. This is part 2 of episode 11, where we interview Amar Singh, head of football content at Budweiser. So if you missed part 1, make sure you go and check that out. In this episode, that Guy Kenn, producer Mr. Crisp, Amar and myself will discuss our top 5 sporting icons and top 5 footballers. And there might be a few surprises, so strap in and let's get started. This is the part of the show that we would normally be calling Baller of the Week. But given the circumstances, it's pretty clear that the Ballers of the Week for all of us would be the NHS workers and the key workers. So with this section, you've probably seen a lot of content going around with people's top 5s, top 5 footballers, top 5, whatever it might be. So we're gonna do a little spin of our round. We've got two rounds. Well, firstly, we're going to do a top 5 of sports people that made us fall in love with sport.
Okay.
And then once we've gone round and we've done that, we're then going to do a top 5 of footballers that made us fall in love with football. Now, I'm going to put it out there now. Like, football is like it's my game. Like it's the one that I love. So there's going to be a bit of a crossover. I don't think it's a competition. It's not.
You will lose.
I'm not losing nothing. Calm down. All I'm saying is I've got a couple of footballers in my sports people list. That's it. There's a bit of a crossover. So shall I kick it off? Shall I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So
this is the Beats and Balls Show.
If we do the top 5 sports people first. So I'm talking, when I say fall in love with sport, I'm not talking about all the stats and all the technical side of things. I'm talking about watching it and just feeling that emotion. So for me, if you've ever listened to any of the shows previously, you will know that my number 1 is Thierry Henry. That man, for me growing up, so I was born in the early 90s. So as an Arsenal fan in the late 90s, early 90s, there's just nothing to say about Thierry Henry that hasn't already been said. He's just there's a lot of people saying now that he's probably the greatest Premier League player of all time. I would obviously agree with that. I'm open to arguments against it, but so Thierry Henry, and my other footballer in that section would be Ronaldinho, because I just remember watching him playing for Brazil at the World Cup, and I was just mesmerized. I was like, this man's legs are like jelly, man. How is he doing all of this? And him more so than Henry actually was the kind of person that got me out trying to recreate all of his moves and all that. Probably because I never had Thierry Henry's pace, but that's about that. And then so then I went for Michael Jordan, just because. I mean, personally, growing up, like I've always been tall. My name's Jordan. Everyone called me Michael Jordan as a kid. So that first bit, I was like, who's this guy? Like, I don't know who this guy is. Then obviously I saw Space Jam. I was like, okay, this guy's cool, man. This guy's so cool. And then I started watching basketball, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get it now. I get why everyone loves this guy. And then I dipped into tennis for a bit for my last ones. I've got the Williams sisters and Roger Federer. I'd say Federer, just because of the class, he was like silk. Like I'd say he was probably the Thierry Henry of tennis, in my opinion. And the Williams sisters, has there ever been a more dominant force in tennis than the Williams sisters? I can't think of any. So my top 5 would be Thierry Henry, Michael Jordan, Ronaldinho, the Williams sisters, and Roger Federer. Now, Ken, seeing as you want to make it a competition, do you want to go next?
Yes. Okay. All right.
Let's do it.
The thing is, I wanted to vary a lot. So I've got 5 people from 5 different sports, and these are my favorite sports. So okay. I will, in no particular order. First one, F1. And the reason I got into F1, I started loving F1, is Michael Schumacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I got into F1 when I came to the UK. So I remember at the time, the name on everyone's lips was Damon Hill. I think it was Damon Hill.
Yep.
And Michael Schumacher was like this baddie. He was like Thanos. He was like, came out of nowhere. He's a bad guy. And I think he used to drive for Benetton at the time, because he used to drive for Benetton Renault, and Damon Hill used to drive for Williams Renault. And then Michael Schumacher went on to Ferrari and just dominated for years.
The rest is history.
And that's just, I remember everyone was always just painting him as the bad guy, and I always used to root for the bad guy. So he really made me love it. And Ferrari, the red prancing horse, loved it. So Michael Schumacher, number 4, F1. Football. Now, I got into football when I came to the UK. I moved to the UK in 93, and I didn't really get into football till about, I'd say, probably 96, 95, 96. I was still into my American basketball when I first moved here. So I remember, obviously, then I wasn't really into the Premiership because it wasn't on TV, but I used to watch Channel 4, Football Italia. And who was the biggest footballer at that time? Zidane. Zidane has been my guy. Like, everybody knows. People talk about Ronaldinho. People talk about, Thierry Henry. People talk about Pep. What's his name? Pele. Everybody. Maradona. To me, football, I don't love football unless you put Zinedine Zidane into that.
Man, I completely feel you. I completely feel you, man. I couldn't agree more. But he's not in my sports.
I started watching football, to the moment he walked out of football with that headbutt, he has been my guy. And the fact that he now managed Real Madrid to 3 consecutive Champions League, I always say to people, Zidane clocked football as a player, as a manager, as an understanding, as a genius around the sport, Zidane. So that's my second guy. Sprinting athletics, Michael Johnson.
I knew you were going to.
I remember Michael Johnson, the way he used to run 200 and 400. I think it was actually impossible for his physique and the way he ran to win both of those events, but he was impeccable. He was flawless, and he'd finish the race with that gold chain around his neck, and he wouldn't be out of breath. And he'd have rinsed the entire team. So Michael Johnson, and then I've got Michael Jordan. Basketball, like I said, when I was in America, I was a big man. So whenever we used to talk about Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all these other guys, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, all these other guys, it was always Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was my guy. I grew up in the US in the early 90s, late 80s. Yeah, so it's like Michael Jordan. He was just the most dominant guy. I remember when he went to the I think it was the All-Stars game. There was one All-Stars game. I think it was the 92 All-Stars or the 91 All-Stars. And during that game, they literally set him up to have a one-on-one, because he was on the East, obviously, for Chicago, and he had a one-on-one with every single player kind of in during the game from the West. And I remember he got past everyone. Like, he balled out, and that was his game. And then finally, boxing. Iron Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
When you think boxing, I think peekaboo. You know that style, that peekaboo style that he had, and he's coming at you with the combo punches. Like, and the one thing that he said that made me realize that, boxers, they had a mentality. Everybody thinks they can fight until they get punched in the mouth. You come in with a strategy, you think, I'm not fighting. I've got heart and brave. And then you look at him and then get punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson in round 2. Mm-hmm. You start thinking twice about, what am I doing with my life?
I should not be in this position.
You know what I mean? So I've got four Michaels and one Zinedine.
That's fair play, man. Fair play. Amar, what are you saying? Have you got a?
Yeah, I was giving this some thought before. And I wrote down a few names, but I'm going to stick with the 5, even though there's a bit of overlap. I'm going to stick with the 5 that I was going to go with, because they are definitely the 5. So number 1 is John Barnes. So, when I was a kid, Liverpool were the team that I was, drawn to. They were the best team. They had Dalglish and Rush, who were unbelievable partnership. And then they signed John Barnes. And, he was one of the first, I would say, black superstars of English football. And he received a lot of racism. And he always dealt with it in a very eloquent way, I always thought. So as a young kid growing up in South London, actually this guy up in Liverpool becoming this star for my team was just so inspirational. So John Barnes, I think, paved the way for a lot of other footballers after him as well. So he was number one. And also, just to say, on the pitch, he was unbelievable. So good. For 2 or 3 years, he was just the best player in the country by a mile. He was very much Thierry Henry before Thierry Henry was doing that. And incidentally, I will say Thierry Henry, I agree with you, he's the greatest Premier League player of all time. So
yeah, I'll tell you that.
Secondly, Diego Maradona. For me, the greatest that ever did it. The first World Cup I remember is 1986. I was very young, but I remember watching those games really late at night. I remember watching Maradona destroy the England team through nefarious means and also through his genius with the other goal, the second goal.
Yeah.
So, and he was very much single-handedly won that World Cup, give or take 2 or 3 talented teammates, but that wasn't a great team. That was a team with an unbelievable star at the heart of it. So Maradona for me, and he's just got a great story as well. Of course, being of Indian background, I have to have a cricketer. Love my cricket. That would be my second passion after football, sporting wise. For me, the greatest again of all time, Sachin Tendulkar. Has broken every record there is to break in terms of batting in cricket. Came into the India team when he was in his teens. I think he was 16 when he made his debut or something ridiculous like that. And every time he went out to bat, he had the hopes of 1 billion people weighing on him. So to play with that kind of pressure over the years was unbelievable. I've met him a couple of times, interviewed him a couple of times, and he was, they say don't meet your heroes, but he is so humble, so down to earth. The other thing I like about Sachin Tendulkar is he's obsessed with food as much as I am. If you look at his autobiography, he writes about like food, like every 3 or 4 pages, he will just go off on one about his favorite tandoori chicken or something, the place where he likes to get chow mein when he's playing the West Indies and stuff. So, super cool guy, Sachin Tendulkar. Nice. Michael Jordan, I'm with you guys on Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time. I grew up watching the NBA in the 90s, which I think was probably the most exciting era for the NBA. He was definitely the best player for that era. I think the Bulls won, 6 championships in the 90s, and he was the star for all of those. So, Michael Jordan was just unbelievable. The athleticism, everything he brought to the game was just brilliant. And then I've also got Venus and Serena because I just think they are everything. They make tennis something special. I was fortunate earlier in my career to report at Wimbledon for the Evening Standard, and Venus and Serena interviewed both of them, interviewed their dad, Richard, who is a real character, really interesting man. From a really interesting background, and I think their story is so unique in sport in terms of their background. One day he decided that he wanted to learn how to coach, and he coached his 2 daughters, and they became the most dominant force in tennis, as you say. And I rate them both equally. A lot of people say Serena is now statistically ahead of Venus, but I'd say it's very difficult to separate the two. They're just both incredible athletes, incredible role models, and really nice people to speak to as well. I interviewed them a couple of times, so that would be my 5.
Nice, I like it. There is definitely a lot of crossover here. We've got we're clearly along the right lines, aren't we? Carl, have you got anything for us?
I have. I think if there's going to be a competition, I think there's somebody, because the crossover is clearly one if there's to be a winner. But I'll say, Amar, thank you for educating us on cricket.
Yeah, I was going to say, we might need to get you back on at some point. Because we have no knowledge on cricket. So,
I love cricket. I love talking about cricket. I love geeking out about cricket. We need to be educated on cricket because I'm from Caribbean heritage.